Good morning, I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche Organization with your daily video update for June 22nd, 2022. The question we're going to look at today is, with the world already poised on the verge of a possible nuclear World War III, why provoke a new crisis using the tiny nation of Lithuania to blockade the Russian port in Kaliningrad? What's behind this disastrous quality of thinking that characterizes the policies of the Western world? Well, the European Union Foreign Secretary, Josep Borrell, said that the decision by Lithuania to shut down the transport of certain goods through its territory to the Russian port of Kaliningrad, that in doing so, Lithuania is acting, quote, in accordance with EU sanctions. Lithuania is doing nothing else but implementing the guidelines provided by the European Union Commission, unquote. This was reiterated by U.S. State Department spokesman Ned Price, who said, quote, "We stand by Lithuania, specifically our commitment to NATO's Article 5, that an attack on one would constitute an attack on all," unquote. He described this as ironclad. So we now have from the European Union Foreign Secretary and from the spokesman for the U.S. State Department that they're taking credit, authorship, for the decision made to shut down the transport of certain goods from Russia through Lithuania to the port of Kaliningrad. Now, Russia said this is a blockade and is a violation of international law. It's a very serious matter, and they're reviewing the situation. The Secretary of the Russian Security Council, Patrushev, said that this is a violation of international law, and Russia, quote, will certainly respond to such hostile actions, unquote. Now take a moment and look at a map. Kaliningrad is on the Baltic Sea. It's the headquarters of the Russian Baltic Sea Fleet. Lithuania has a population of 2.5 million. Will those 2.5 million be sacrificed as the launching pad for World War III? Because that's where things are headed. Now, why are the US, the UK, and NATO escalating their drive for this confrontation with Russia? Do they not understand that they're playing with the danger of World War III, possibly nuclear war, being triggered by their continuation to funneling arms and money to Ukraine? Well, they're setting up other countries now, like Lithuania, as a provocation against Russia. Now, this is occurring as there's growing nervousness from certain sectors of leadership in the West. We see strikes hitting the United Kingdom and Belgium as the economy and the inflation is exacting a horrible toll on populations who have not seen wage increases as the cost of living has gone through the roof. There's a collapse of popular support for governments. The parliamentary elections in France showed that Macron could not gain a majority in the parliament, and that the likelihood is that the French government will be divided between the left, the right, the center, in a way that nothing can be accomplished. We see Biden's popularity polling going through the floor. He's at levels not seen since the Jimmy Carter collapse in 1979, 1980. There's a possible government crisis in Italy, especially as they're continuing to send arms to Ukraine while enacting austerity against the population. Now, then you also look at this, to complete the picture, you have the consistent advances by the Russians militarily in the Donbass, cutting off Ukrainian forces, devastating some of the weapons that are being shipped in. And then you now have a concern being expressed from within the establishment circles from former U.S. Ambassador to NATO, Robert Hunter, who wrote an article in which he called for a postponement of the Madrid summit, which is scheduled for the end of this month. The Madrid NATO summit is going to include a direct drive for expanding NATO to include Finland and Sweden, but also bringing in Asian countries, Japan, South Korea, Australia, and New Zealand, at least as consulting partners in NATO, as the push to contain China is going to become part of NATO's mission. Now, Hunter said that the summit should be postponed out of concern that tensions inside NATO, that is between different nations, could lead to a discrediting of NATO, that is the public airing of disagreements. And he said this would have negative longer-term impact on both NATO and America's reputation for reliable leadership, unquote. Well, after U.S. failures in the endless wars, the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan, and its role in destroying nations and killing civilians through sanctions policy, as well as the U.S. role in creating global inflation through the money pumping by the central bank, that reputation is already in shreds. What is he talking about? What is the U.S. reputation internationally? Why are so many governments, especially in the global South, refusing the demands from the United States to give complete support to its isolation of Russia? Well, the issue here is not postponing the NATO summit. Why not end support for the war in Ukraine? Why not stop the weapons flow and stop the pats on the back and the laudatory response to Zelensky, which is only encouraging Ukraine to continue to send its population, its army, into the meat grinder of the Russian assault, and at the same time leading to destruction of the economy and the civil sector of Ukraine. Why not stop that? Why not discuss with Putin the security guarantees that he demanded for Russia, but also pledged would be security guarantees not only for Russia, but Ukraine and all other countries? Why not take that up instead of pursuing this war? And then why not engage in serious discussion of bankruptcy reorganization? Since the problem worldwide is that the economic system of the post-Bretton Woods era and the post-Cold War era is collapsing, smothered by debt with worthless floods of paper money and computer-generated money flowing into protecting financial instruments with no underlying value. Why not begin that negotiation and bring forward the idea of cooperation between sovereign states acting in the interests of their population? That's what should be done right now, instead of looking for more provocations. The point here is that the NATO commitment, driven by the United Kingdom, especially the lunatic Johnson administration, and of course Boris Johnson is just a placeholder for the City of London, but it's the lunatics that are behind this, the City of London, the Wall Street, the military utopians whose think tanks they fund. These are the sponsors of this war and the ones who refuse to pull back from it, even at the threat that it could trigger a thermonuclear war, which some of them actually think the US and the West could win. That's the lunacy that we're facing. That's why it's essential that the people listening to this webcast, listening to the Schiller Institute conference from last weekend, become active participants in mobilizing a network to take power out of the hands of these lunatics. We'll have more on this in the coming days. Again, the Schiller Institute conference from last weekend will give you a lot of ideas on why this is happening and what must be done. And I'd urge you to go there, consult it, and become participants in our mobilization to defeat the drive for this new global order based on the Great Reset, the Green New Deal, and constant warfare. Thanks for joining me. I'll be back again tomorrow.